G'day, I'm your van der Linde and I'm joined by my colleague Lonel. Today we'll be discussing the election outcome. Lo, election fatigue is certainly setting in, but the results were quite a doozy. What do you make of it?
Absolutely staggering. It certainly made everyone sit up and take notice. We had anticipated prior to the election that the ANC would lose its majority. That was pretty much accepted. The polling told us that they would go as low as 40%, which we certainly thought seemed to be an overestimation. But in the end, that's exactly what happened. In the end, the ANC had a return of just over 40%. They went from 10 million votes in 2019 to about 3.5 million votes lost in one election cycle. It is unprecedented and quite extraordinary. But the story of the election is very much all uMkhonto weSizwe. The MK party was only registered in September last year and really only came to the prominence in December. A famous press conference by former President Jacob Zuma on December 16th when he announced that he was going to be the leader of MK. In the end, the numbers, they do not lie. The ANC has gone down to nearly 40%. They've surrendered their national majority, but they've done so in 3 more provinces as well. In the Northern Cape, they came in just below 50. In Gauteng, they went from a little over 50 to down to 35%. And in KwaZulu-Natal, absolutely astonishing. They went from having a majority, they are down to 17%. They are the 3rd biggest party in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, uMkhonto weSizwe ended up with about 2.3 million votes, which is an incredible return. It's almost 15%. It's well above what anyone anticipated. Now, those 2.3 million votes were earned pretty much in 3 provinces. They were earned in KwaZulu-Natal, where they got 1.6 million votes. They were earned across the border in the south of Mpumalanga, where they got another almost 200,000 votes. And then a pretty good return in Gauteng as well, where about 350,000 people voted for MK, making them the 4th biggest party in Gauteng with about 10% of the return. They are now also the official opposition in Mpumalanga, where they had such a great return. The bulk of those votes came from the ANC. The ANC dropped 1.4 million votes in KZN. The EFF was down as well, 270,000 votes. The IFP held steady. They actually increased their vote share by a little bit, not a great deal. That was anticipated. Most people prior to the emergence of the NK party would have anticipated the IFP was going to pick the ANC's pocket. In the end, they managed to grow slightly to be the 2nd biggest party in KZN, but they didn't lose their votes to MK, I don't think. But the ANC did, and certainly the EFF did. The EFF now is the 4th biggest party in the country. They've lost 3rd place to MK. They lost a staggering 350,000 votes in this particular election cycle. They're down below 10%. The Democratic Alliance remains the official opposition. They also didn't have a great time at the polls. They also had fewer votes than they had in 2019 election that cost Musi Maimane his job. But in percentage terms, a slight bump from the last time around. They find themselves in a strong position as a consequence of being this far ahead of everybody else. There are a couple of other small parties that also had a good time. The Patriotic Alliance, prior to this election, a lot of anti-immigrant rhetoric, really negative campaigning from them, but the party went from literally less than 7,000 votes in 2019 to well over 230,000 votes in this particular election cycle, earning a lot of those votes down here in the Western Cape and in the Northern Cape, where they had a pretty good time, and puts them in 6th place in Parliament. Parliament has gone from 14 parties to 18, but a lot of the newer parties that were speaking to disaffected ANC voters really didn't interest voters all that much. And parties like Build One South Africa, Rise Mzansi, they have 2 seats apiece. Some of the other newcomers have 1 seat apiece. So Parliament has increased in terms of number of parties participating in it, but the composition of Parliament has changed dramatically, but because of MK.
Yeah, quite unprecedented, as you say. But, what does all of this mean?
Well, the reality is that the ANC has done so poorly in this election that they will not be able to cobble together a ruling coalition with smaller parties, as many as I think the market had anticipated. At 40%, they have 159 seats in a 400-member National Assembly, And so they're forced to turn to one of the larger opposition parties, either the Liberal Democratic Alliance or the populist leftist Economic Freedom Fighters. But as we've now seen as well, MK has got enough seats in parliament to enter into that picture and could be a potential coalition partner. Because MK's raison d'etre is to usurp the ANC and to very much see the back of President Cyril Ramaphosa, one would imagine that ANC would be reticent to negotiate a coalition with them. Having said that, there are many within the ANC who find the idea of partnering with the DA quite unpalatable. And then many would, of course, also worry about partnering the EFF. Again, concerns about that party usurping them in the long term. And certainly with a charismatic leader like Julius Malema, you don't necessarily want to invite them into your government and see them take over where you've left off. No one has made it clear which way they're leaning at this point in time. The DA made it clear even before the election results had been announced that they had put together a negotiating team, including 2 former leaders, a chief whip, a really heavy-hitting negotiating party. The ANC meets tomorrow, the National Executive Committee. One would imagine some kind of decision made then tomorrow, at least in terms of what their negotiating party looks like, and then talks kick on from here. The IFP is part of that equation as well. Largely, I think, because the ANC would like to build a wall in KZN, because I think everyone has now seen the threat posed by uMkhonto weSizwe. A big question mark hangs over uMkhonto weSizwe itself. They have made it clear. They made it clear the results center of the weekend. They do not accept the outcome of the election. They're picking a fight with the Electoral Commission. One might see them boycotting the first sitting of Parliament, for instance, where they have 58 seats. And so a lot now depends on the posture adopted by MK, and in fact whether or not uMkhonto weSizwe is part of those coalition talks at all.
Yeah, I mean, the next few days are going to be crucial, and we'll have to see how things pan out.
Next few days, next few weeks, I would suggest. We thought we were going to get some rest. It's not going to happen.
Indeed. Thank you for joining.